little order in this. So we're going to ask the petitioners to come up and speak to the petition and give them 10 minutes for yourself and whoever else you want to speak on your behalf for the petitions. And then we'll reserve time after that for the board to ask questions, or if the board wants to hear from anybody else. We won't be taking public comments unless the board wants somebody in the audience to speak. And the board can ask for whoever they want to, obviously. But so if the board identifies somebody to speak, we'll listen to them. So we're going to try 10 minutes. We've heard all these petitions before, so we're not plowing new ground here. So 10 minutes with the petitioners, and then the board will ask any questions or listen to any other speakers that they want to hear, either pro or against the petitions themselves. Okay, and once again, let's observe all rules of courtesy and kindness and respect. I just ask you to be nice to people. So the first one is a discussion and voting on proposed rule, the amendment to SCB Rule 183-1-12-.12, tabulating results. Subject to the rules, hand counting presentation from Charlene Alexander and Janelle King, member of the board, Janelle King.
I am a 34-year resident of Fayette County, and I want to make it very clear that every time I have presented a petition, I am presenting it as an individual and not on behalf of any organization or any other individual. I find it amazing that since most of us in many of our counties on this hand count of ballots, we did it. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've heard from a number of counties that we used to always hand count. Since 2020, we hand counted the ballots on election day, and we also did it during early voting. So I don't understand why this big uproar is going on, and we didn't think that it added that much time. One thing I do want to say is there's a lot of misunderstanding of this rule. We are not saying that we are tabulating those ballots. We are strictly counting the number of ballots that come out of that scanner. And I'm going to show you something because I don't understand how this goes. But let's say this is a stack of ballots, all right? The paper might be a little bit thicker. All you're going to do is you can take a finger glove or a stop quick, that licky stuff, and all you're going to do is these are going to come in, they're going to be upside down, you could be looking at the back, it doesn't matter, you're pulling them out of a pile, and you're strictly going to go to the corner and you're just going to count those ballots. Now, how difficult is that? That is not a big deal. I mean, in my opinion, that's not a big deal. So, and you should be thankful. I mean, if everything is so good, and we're back there and we are counting these ballots and 3 of them come up with the same amount, and it agrees with the scanner, great. Have you ever heard the term cross-check, which we have in the airlines, we have all over the place? Cross-check means that we are verifying a set of numbers or a discussion by using another means. That's all we're doing. We are strictly saying that the ballots came out of the scanner, and we are going to say this is the total number of ballots. It is not that difficult. I don't know why you keep saying that there's going to be errors. You put them in stacks of 50 and cross-lay them. The reason you do that is as you put those stacks of 50 together and you count them and you go to the total count, let's say you come up and one of you has 1 or 2 different than the other 2. It's very easy to go through a stack of 50 and find the one that's missing. That has happened, but you keep going until you have it. So I think there's just been a whole lot of misunderstanding about this rule. You're blowing it way out of proportion. I have been a poll worker, poll watcher, and I've been an assistant manager. I have done these counts, And I just don't understand why you're fighting it like you are. The taxpayers pay your job, you to do your job, and, you know, you want to ensure that everything is correct. That's all we're asking, is that you are double-checking the ballots that came out. I'm going to turn this over, since we're under a 10-minute guideline, and we've discussed this many times. I have the good fortune that one of several co-authors of the Help America Vote Act is here with us today. And I'm going to introduce Mr. Harry Hari, and he's going to explain to you the concepts of chain of custody as well as paper audit trails. Thank you, Harry.
As introduced, my name is Harry Howry. I've been active in elections since the 1990s. Most people don't know it, but the Help America Vote Act was written by people from Missouri, and I happen to be from Missouri. That was John Ashcroft and Paul DiGregorio and one private individual that was a casual cyber and operational consultant. That was me. So there were hundreds of people involved. We got involved first in Bush v. Gore. And the goal of the Help America Vote Act was very simple. We didn't want to have litigation. We wanted to have a pristine election system. The concept behind HAVA, or the Help America Vote Act, was to create a system that was self-proving. That implies the ability to audit and reconcile. What we find here across the whole country is a lack of reconciliation or control points. Anybody that has an experience in auditing, and I have both financial auditing experience and cyber forensic auditing experience, knows that you have to have control measures so that you can figure out what happened when there's an error. Most people don't understand this, but in 2022, the official election results in Georgia still have a 39,000 vote discrepancy between the official number of voters and the official number of votes. I am not saying that that was an error in the count. I'm saying that the control systems are not working. There have been a lot of things done in Georgia to improve this situation. I will acknowledge that we have professionals that have no particular iron in the fire that are doing election work all over the country. We have to acknowledge their professionalism, but at the same time, as Alexander Hamilton and James Madison started, they said our election system is intrinsically adversarial. It is designed so that I don't have to trust you and you don't have to trust me as Republicans or Democrats, and neither one of us have to trust the bureaucrats. That is the way the system was designed. We get caught up in this whole narrative that somehow we're insulting or replacing the election workers. There are a lot of great people out there. They should be, congratulated on the great work that they do, but at the same time, we have to have provable systems. This is about provable systems. One of the easiest places to start the reconciliation is by comparing the number of ballots manually to what the machines are telling us we have. It's easier to find the error at the beginning than it is at the end. Who has ever tried to balance a whole year's worth of journal entries or accounting entries for their small business? You don't do it at the end, you do it at the beginning, or else you're going to have many sleepless nights as you try to reconcile the two. The example with the banking system of counting and recounting the money is an example of zero trust. I don't have to trust the cashier or the teller, and they don't have to trust me. Both of us compare the results. And when they don't agree, what do? We figure out why they don't agree on the spot, and it's solved. Now, the estimate, I don't want to impugn the numbers, but the idea that to do what we're talking about, simply counting the ballots, takes 65 cents a ballot is outrageous. It's not going to take 65 cents a ballot to do this kind of counting. It's not going to interfere or impugn. If the mechanical systems are correct, great. but we'll know for sure that starting the process of counting and tabulating the ballots starts from a good and sound foundation. We have this problem in many, many other ways, but the idea that we break chain of custody by simply opening a system and counting them is nonsense. You might need sign-offs, you might need attestations, you may need dual oversight to make sure that nobody's doing anything that they shouldn't be doing, but we do this all the time. We do it with adjudication, we do it with provisional reconciliation, and then we have things like mail-in ballots that we're not doing anything with to determine whether all the mail-in ballots even got into the system to count. So I would recommend very strongly that this is not an abrogation of chain of custody. If it's done properly, it's a very small impediment to the system, a very small amount of labor, and it gives you a very good reconciliation of the count of the ballots in the system. And from our perspective, my perspective, any type of system that improves accountability and improves auditability, which is a requirement, by the way, under HAVA, all auditable items are supposed to be maintained. What does that mean, all auditable items? It actually is a performance-based standard. It's saying that if you can audit this item, you have to maintain the information to be able to audit the item. It makes no other sense otherwise. You don't create an audit system, you don't create a financial control system by arbitrarily saying, well, we're going to monitor our memos and our journal entries, but we're not going to pay any attention at all to accounts payable. This is what we're talking about here. Controls that make sure that the system is pristine and clean from the beginning. If it costs a little bit of money, you know, this is an issue obviously that has to be grappled with, but the fact of the matter is a non-provable election is what is eating the country up right now. We have to protect all of the people's rights. This isn't about denying entry into the system. This is about making sure that we come up with a result that we all can trust. And I would suggest that you all consider strongly passing these particular resolutions.
Amen. Come on.
You stay here. You stay here.
Ms. Alexander, you have about a minute left.
Okay, you're going to ask questions?
Well, the board then will, if they have
Okay.
questions, they'll ask them.
The other thing that we have to keep in mind is we're not counting the ballots every single day. And I know there have been a lot of numbers that have been tossed out. I've looked at the numbers, the ones that I could get. Understand that when we're talking about whether it's election day or early voting, we are talking about drilling it down from registered voters to estimated turnout, and then you are breaking it down by the precincts, and you're taking it on down to election day. You all know that roughly 20% vote on election day. You take that, Fulton County, 432 precincts, take that 20% of your turnout and divide it by 432. Trust me, there were not any precincts that I found in 22 in Fulton that were over 1,700 people showed up on election day. We're not talking about doing 5,000 on one day. If so, 3 is the minimum. 3 is the minimum. You can always bring in more, as long as we can control them. So, that's my minute.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Are there comments from the board or questions from the board? Member Gazal, and I ask the board, please, one at a time, and I'll try and keep an eye on who wants to speak and keep this an orderly process. So.
Has anybody conducted a survey of precincts across the state to understand whether or not there's even the physical capacity? Because this is one of the concerns that I've heard from election supervisors, that they just don't have the space to do this in a way that is secure. Have you spoken with election supervisors about the implementation of this?
Yes, not all of them, of course. There are some that won't even talk to me, but have I talked to the ones that I know? And I've watched it happen in my county and in some of our surrounding counties, and you're just not talking about a big deal. You have to have tables to bring bring the people in, and so you check them in. You've got tables there where you've used the poll pads. You can move the poll pads off, and that's what you do as soon as you close the polls, and you've got tables right there. We're not asking people to turn those ballots up so you can see them. It's however they come out of the scanner. You're just going to take and put them so that you can count them. Do I think we did it. I mean, I don't understand, because across the state, most of the counties in 2020 up through October of 2022, they did exactly what these rules asked for. And we didn't hear any complaints then about not having room.
The complaints that I have heard are that the late date, the resources, the time, and the fact that there are extremely strict statutory requirements of getting other information uploaded to the state. And that has been the reason that I understand the state recommended not doing this at the precinct, is because it was leading, was not done in a way that was accurate. There were problems with it. They tried this and it failed. And I am going to defer to the 159 counties and the election experts who actually conduct elections and have done so for decades. And I'm going to rely on their expertise, because I have not conducted an election. I know a lot. I'm an attorney. I am an election law attorney. I've observed elections across the globe. And I know that the 159 counties have professionals that we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to. I think that the aspersions that have been cast...
We're not going to cheer for election officials today.
The aspersions that have been cast upon our election professionals, who are wholly nonpartisan, to suggest that they are partisan actors because they articulate the problems that they're facing, is a gross understanding of what the burdens and duties of election officials are. And, sorry, I don't mean to get y'all in trouble. And the fact of the matter is, if we pass a rule, they're required to adhere to it, and they're telling us that they can't. They're telling us that this is a problem. We're hearing that this is also beyond the scope of our statutory authority. So I understand chain of custody. I understand the checks and balances very well, and I know that reconciliation is conducted throughout the day, comparing voters checked in, comparing ballots that are printed out, and the number of ballots that have been scanned into the tabulator. That is cross-checked multiple times throughout the day to suggest that we don't believe in reconciliation, because this rule that would come into force the day before early voting starts is a gross mischaracterization.
Member King.
All right. I do have a question for you, Member Gazan. When you say they and all, are you stating that every election worker and official is against this rule? Well, I'm asking a question.
I'm stating that everyone that I have heard from personally is against it. There may well be some who support this. I have not received any support from an election supervisor. I have not received any messages supporting this from an election supervisor. Poll workers, yes, but poll workers are not responsible for the entire county, and they will not be held responsible for violations of this rule.
So what you're saying is that your poll workers, there are some poll workers that are in support of this, the individuals that will actually have to do it. And then you're also saying that, are you not including Ms. Charlene as one of those election officials?
I'm talking about the people who actually run the elections and are responsible for running the elections day to day.
Okay.
And also, Ms. Alexander is here in her personal capacity, not representing the board.
Well, I would hope that there isn't anyone that's just standing up here representing everyone, especially when there are differences of opinions. That being said, just to be clear, this rule is referring to election day only, correct?
The first one, yes, ma'am.
This rule, on average, as you stated, the 1,700 ballots that you saw that was in one precinct in Fulton County. that was
2022.
In
I mean,
2022. We did amend this rule, to be
Yes.
clear. This rule was an amendment that we basically said that those who have 750 ballots or more can come in the next day or the next business day, whichever, whatever, you know, it is. Either way, they can come in and they can count throughout the certification week. That's how we amended it. When it comes to counting these ballots on election day, are we talking about an average of 250? What's the average number of ballots that we have in each precinct?
I'd have to go back and look. I had to pull every precinct, and I pulled about 10 counties, you know,
Okay.
Gwinnett, Fayette.
Okay.
And I don't know that I could tell you the average because it varies precinct to precinct in
Of
each
the 10
county.
that you pulled 10 counties of various different sizes, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Any other comments from the board? Member Johnston?
Thank you for your presentation. First, let me address the issue of timing, since there were 30 speakers and everyone that was against the rules, I believe, expressed their concern about timing for passing this rule or any rule just before an election. First, I take pause with Gabrielle suggesting to alter the Administrative Procedures Act that says that in rulemaking that rules are adopted and become effective in 20 days. It's not appropriate for Gabrielle to say, we want it to be 60 days or 90 days. If that's the case, then there probably needs to be some legislative changes. But as far as passing rules close to an election, I did a little homework, and I looked in our state election board rules. I think we have maybe 69 or 59 rules. And I'll share with you Rule 183.16.02, voter registration, was adopted on October 29th, 2009. Rule 183.6.04, accessibility for the elderly and handicapped, was passed on September 18th and made effective on October 8th. Rule 183.112.06, handling of voting systems, adopted on 10/18 and made effective on 11/7. Rule 183.12.08, logic and accuracy testing, adopted on 9/22/2021, effective 10/12/2021. Rule 183.112.11, conducting elections, adopted on 9/22/2021, effective 10/12/2021. Tabulating results, adopted on 9/22/2021, effective 10/12/2021. Provisional ballots, adopted on 9/22/2021, effective 10/12/2021. Handling spooled absentee ballots, adopted on 9/16/2020, effective 10/6/2020. Eligibility of application for absentee ballot, adopted on 9/22/2021, effective 10/12/2021. Notification of absentee ballot rejection, adopted 8/31/2020, effective 8/31/2020. Early absentee ballot processing, 9/22/2021, effective 10/12/2021. Audit, audit procedure, adopted on 9/24/2020, effective 10/14/2020. Emergency rules were adopted in 2020. Emergency Rule 183-14-.06 through .14, that would be 8 rules, adopted on 4/15/2020, effective 4/15/2020, just before a primary. Rule 183-1-14.7 through .15, that would be 6 rules, effective, adopted 5/18/2020, and effective the same day. So, and there are more. So the hue and cry about how early or how late it is to be adopting these rules, I don't buy. This is, rulemaking is good any month of the year, and as I look through the rules, actually the rules are adopted and made effective throughout the year, every month of the year. There's no exception. A good rule is good. Now, when it's effective may have an effect on whether it applies to a particular election. But I think the concern about timing probably should be thought about a little more carefully. Now, as far as this particular petition, my question is, Mr. Howery, is the failure to count the paper ballots a failure of compliance with HAVA?
So there are many different ways that the objectives of HAVA can be met, but the idea that you can allow systems to ingest ballots without control points violates both HAVA and the security controls associated with the way that the machines are being used under the Federal Information Security Modernization Act. You're required under both of these to have auditability. And so when you dispense with anything that would provide control points, then you don't have auditability. This is a natural piece of auditing. So anybody that is familiar, CPAs or cyber people here, know what I'm talking about with regard to control points. So if you have no control points, you have no auditability. And so back to your question, if you don't have a mechanism of providing control over these systems, you don't comply with HAVA.
I'm not sure how we could have control if we're not counting the ballots at the point of opening the ballot box, where you're breaking the chain of custody.
Yeah, I agree. There's no way to do something quickly that would resolve this issue. This is a relatively light impact on the system, and it doesn't. There was a comment made about whether or not late rulemakings are appropriate. Generally speaking, when you're talking about enfranchising or disenfranchising people, this is where the judges generally get a little bit skittish about whether or not a late rulemaking is appropriate. But something that's purely operational like this, with zero enfranchisement impact, has no basis for delay. It simply does nothing to change the basic concept of counting the votes. Now, you have to have chain of custody procedures that are protecting the ballots, but that's a foregone conclusion and already done in the existing system.
Thank you. So this rule would not impact voter experience?
No, it shouldn't at all.
Okay. I have read many complaints about a delay in the counting or delay in election night reporting. But the fact of the matter is, it's not the ballots that are counted on election night. It's the memory cards that are counted. And my understanding is runners take the memory cards to the election office or to designated law enforcement or to designated employees, election workers. I see an election worker shaking her head. But it's the memory cards that tabulation occurs with. Correct. Please.
No, not unless Dr. Johnson would like
We-
to hear from one of you.
Please. Sure.
Press your button so I can. All right.
So thank you for hearing from me. Rebecca Anglin from Greene County. So this varies county by county. What my county does is not what a neighboring county does. Many counties do not have the ability to run the memory card or have these runners that you speak of or have sheriff's deputies. What I do in my county is not what my neighboring county does. They do not have the resources to do that. So to say that it would not cause delays on election night is not true or accurate. It will cause delays for certain counties. Now, my county does it one way and we will get our results in. What my neighboring county does, they do not have the resources to do it the same way I do it, and they have to wait at the precinct because the manager and both assistants, or the manager and one, because it has to be under dual control, they have to bring the results back. So you're waiting until everything has been counted. They have to keep those ballots with them and that memory card with them. That would break chain of custody if they did opposite of that. So if they do not stay together, fill out their chain of custody, have that memory card, have those ballots with them, and drive it back to precinct, you are waiting until all of this has been done election night before it gets back to that office. And you're talking about counties with multiple precincts. We're not talking about a small county. I'm in a small county. We're talking about counties with larger capacities and many precincts. If they're not implementing something like what I do at my county, you're talking about 12, 15, 20, 30 precincts that you are waiting on. It will definitely delay results on election night.
Oop. I'm gonna have to get a bigger gavel.
So, so when the ballot box is open, the chain of custody is broken, and I have worked as a poll worker, and I have crawled into those ballot boxes to get the ballots out, and I see them strewn all over the floor, and it takes a certain amount of time just to do that, and to put them back together and tap them and get them straightened. It's not like the pristine pile that somebody walked up here with. It's like 52 card pickup, but I think that's the moment when these ballots could be put on the table and counted. And as I spoke last month, I looked at several counties at their election day ballot cast, and the numbers were not that great. And as the trend continues to move toward early in-person voting, the election day vote ballots cast actually becomes smaller and smaller. And so I think the time to do that and bring all the equipment together, that's what we're trying to work for. What I'm trying to work for is some uniformity. And if some counties are counting ballots and others are not, it's not uniform. Now, how you get them to the polling place, there's certainly options and choices for county supervisors to use. But counting the ballots, if you're not doing that, then I fear that we're not providing equal protection, okay? And that's very important. That one county is providing the provable, auditable trail, and another county is not. And if you ever want to do an audit, a risk limiting audit, or if you need to do a recount and you have not counted those pieces of paper, and then you open the batch and the number of ballots is not the same, what do you do? How do you remedy that? What's the remedy? Because you didn't count it in the first place. How do you reconcile that? So there is a reason to have a cross-check, a double-check. There's a reason the ballots are being touched. I've heard complaints that, oh my gosh, so many hands touching the ballots. Well, I'll tell you what, their hands are touching the ballots, because I've been there at the end of early voting and at the end of election night, and the ballots, you're dragging them out of that box, and they're all over the floor, and there are a lot of hands touching them, but that's not bad. It's just that you're trying to restore the order and follow the process that's called for. But it's the perfect time to count the ballots anyway. And it's better to do it in the beginning than try to do it at the end when you don't have a remedy for a miscount. And yeah, you might get it wrong the first time. You counted 49 instead of 50. But you do it again until you get it right. It's easy, nothing to it. So, this petition, for a rule, does not affect the voter experience. It does affect the election workers, and I appreciate the young man that said that he does count, but that means that if somebody else is not counting, we're not treating the election the same. We're not uniform in how we conduct the election, and we are tasked to make sure that there's uniformity in all of the counties. I'll yield.
Mr. Chair.
Member Jeffries, you have any comments that you'd like to make? Member King.
So during early voting, at the end of the night, let me backtrack. When I worked for the state party and I did data work, what would happen is at the end of early voting, we had a group of people who were going out doing door knocking, and so that we weren't disturbing people who had already voted, we would use the data from the Secretary of State's office that showed who had already voted early or submitted their absentee, and remove them off of our rolls so that we wouldn't knock on their door because they've already voted. So during early voting process, or early voting, at the end of each night, there was a form of reconciliation for those who were tracking data throughout the election process. We had, if something came up and there was a problem, you had a couple more days to address it in live time, and at that time. I was recently given a perfect example of why I think election day counting for sure is necessary. Here's why. So a gentleman, this is a true story, there was a gentleman who walked into their polling place. They voted, they got the printout, and then they asked if they could take a picture of their vote before they put it into the scanner. They were denied. Unfortunately, this man did something that's against the law, but he ran out and decided not to put his scanner, his document in the scanner, his ballot in the scanner. That would mean that the poll pad number would be different from the scanner number, right? So when we're talking about, so during early voting, if I saw that, I would have a couple of more days to call and say, hey, why doesn't this number match? What's the problem? On election day, it's a little different. The data that will come up, obviously you have your certification week, but it's a little different. So I believe that particularly on election day, having one additional step to ensure that there's an understanding on a precinct level as to why our numbers are either matching or not matching, because that's an example of how the numbers could be a little off. And there are people that do not trust the machines. So there are people that would like to have a record of some sort of their ballot, although that's not permissible. But that particular situation could occur, and it can occur several times over. To Dr. Jan's point, should we not have those extra days like we do with early voting, where we can go through, look at the data, see what's happened the day before, what happened a couple of days before? We're now at the mercy of addressing this issue on a statewide level. And that will cause, if we want to talk about chaos, I mean, we are still, to this day, talking about things that took place, not just in 2020, but also in 2018, because we're trying to comb through from a statewide level. So I personally, the reason why I amended this rule personally was because I did take into consideration the fact that people were working long hours. And I did feel like if you have over 750 ballots, now that number came from looking at the average that we discussed prior to amending of how many ballots at the most all the way down to the least per precinct. And what we found was that there was maybe 1,700 in one precinct in Fulton. I think the greater number was, next greater number was 750. And then at that point, it dropped down to about 300, and it kept going.
300 to 500.
Right,
Yes.
300 to 500, and it just kept going. So that's why I amended that, because I did feel like counting 1,700 ballots after working 18 hours or 16 hours is a long time. So that was amended. That being said, I do not want to continue, and I say continue because as I listened to speakers, we had one speaker state that there was 31 counts of fraud, but then in the same conversation, the same message said that there was no fraud. And I get confused when I hear stuff like that. However, what I don't want to do is set a precedent that we are okay with speed over accuracy. A delay of any sort, whether it be a couple of hours, I can guarantee you as a voter, I would rather wait another hour to ensure that the count is accurate than to get a count or get a number within that hour, and then to find out at the close of an election, after certification has already taken place, that we have people suing because the count was not accurate. Not only that, we have people who are upset about the whole concept of the reasonable inquiry, but we're also saying that we do not want to ensure that our numbers are accurate enough to push these numbers to our county board members and then have them sign that legal document that they are held accountable for, that they will be charged with a felony if the count is incorrect, because the document says accurate and perfect. So I think that what we're doing is creating more stability in our election process. We're also putting our county board members in position to certify with confidence, since that's the big concern. And again, we're counting election day only ballots. If it extends it for a short period of time, let's do so that we can be accurate across the state. Now, I know there are counties that are doing this to perfection, I know that for a fact. And I am sorry that there is a slight impact on you because you have to almost bear the brunt of the counties that are not. However, to Dr. Jan's comment, uniformity does matter, and it does create foundational stability.
Any further comments from the board?
Yes.
Dr. Johnson?
Just to remind the attendees here, California counts their ballots, the largest state in the country. Illinois counts their ballots. Massachusetts and Alabama count their ballots, and all of Canada counts its ballots. This is not an unknown or an unused process as far as elections go. And this is the opportunity to pick up on the errors, such as perhaps an occasional machine malfunction, as reported in DeKalb County when the ballot design created a problem and the numbers came up wrong. If they had counted the ballots, they would have immediately recognized that there was a problem. So I think that's important to know. To share with this group, in the last presidential election, Columbia County on election day had ballot counts in the 300 to 400 range. That's not an unbearable number of ballots to count. Paulding County had ballot totals in the 500 to 700 range. Cobb County had 480 ballots average on election day. And similarly, actually during advance voting, now I think 4 years ago things may have been skewed toward absentee by mail because of COVID, but even during early voting, the number of ballots per day, per scanner, is very, very workable. Cherokee County had 287, with a large number of, at one precinct of 1,400. So the checks that I could find suggest that this is not an unreasonable number. I think the delay would be warranted, and it would provide that auditable control feature that one would strive to have to be compliant with HAVA. And oddly enough, when we do a recount, the option is either now it's machine, but there can be a request for a hand count for a recount. So what are you doing? You're counting the ballots by hand. The RLA, or the audit that we're using now, is a hand count. It's also a tabulation, but you're also hand counting the ballots. So anyway, I will yield for others.
Any further comments by the board? Member Jeffries?
I'm good.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
I have a few comments,
Oh, okay.
if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Ms. Alexander, I appreciate you submitting this petition. I really do. It's given this board a lot to think about. I think that there's some gold in it, a little bit of it. I disagree with some things that I want to talk about. And I've received more comments from this, I think, than any other rule that we've tried to pass so far. And if I were to count them, which I haven't, it would probably come up 50-50 pro and against, but the overwhelming number of election officials that have reached out to me have been opposed to this. And I, for one, greatly appreciate the comments made by the election officials, because they're the ones that have to run this election on a day-to-day basis and have to staff those facilities and hire those poll workers. And so I appreciate their comments, and they're the ones that have to deal with whatever rules we put into place. There are several things that concern me about this. Number one, I do think it's too close to the election. I do. I think that it's too late to train a lot of poll workers that have already started their training processes, and to go back and have to retrain them on something like this. I think there's a lack of resources in many counties to effectuate this rule, and the cost we hadn't discussed about the extra workers, the time for that, just hiring extra workers to do something like this if it's necessary. I think there's significant chain of custody issues, because now you're talking about if you wait till the second day to try and count these things, well, then you're putting them in a box, taking them someplace else, taking them out of a box, you're counting them, you're putting them back in a box. It's just a lot of chain of custody issues I have concern over. But most importantly, I believe that this is not supported at all in statute. This body, this board is an administrative body. It's not a legislative body. If the legislature had wanted this, they would have put it in statute. It's not in statute. You can't read any place in statute where this is. This board is not here to make law. We're here to interpret law, and I don't see any place in statute where we're interpreting the hand counting of ballots after they come out of the machine. And therefore, I don't know if you're clapping for me or Waffle House, but that's okay. But it's just not supported in statute. We have received guidance from the Secretary of State and from the Attorney General's office that say it's not supported in statute. If this board votes to implement this rule, I think that we put ourselves in legal jeopardy by taking this rule. I think that the more appropriate course of action for this board would be to send a proposal to the legislature. If we believe in this, then let's send a proposal to the legislature and ask them to enact this. You know, let's let the legislature do their job. We don't need to do the job for them. That would be my comments on this. We know the legislature is not shy of passing laws, whether you like them or not. But they need to do their job. So this board needs to take seriously the guidance that we've received from the Attorney General, from the Secretary of State's office, and from the election professionals across this state that have opined on this particular rule. For that reason, I will oppose this. Like I said, I don't disagree with what you're trying to do. The mechanics of it bother me significantly, especially when it comes to statute. I will always follow the legislature on these types of issues.
What about HAVA? Do you agree that you should be compliant with HAVA and the other federal laws?
Well, I am going to pass the buck to the legislature on all of this. So, are there any other comments from the board?
One further.
Yes, Dr. Johnson.
One further comment. In OCGA 21.2, the definition of ballot is 21.2.2 is ballot is official ballot or paper ballot. In 21.2.434, as the election code describes counting paper ballots, it says only official ballots shall be deposited in the ballot box and counted. 21.2.437 says after the polls have closed, the ballots shall then be counted one by one and a record made of the total. So one could argue that we do have an electronic voting system, Dominion, but it was sold to the state of Georgia that it produces a paper ballot. So indeed, we actually have a voting system that uses a paper ballot, and these statutes should apply. 434 and 437. After the polls have closed, the ballots shall then be counted one by one and a record made of the total. So if we're following that statute, because we tell the citizens of Georgia that we have paper ballots, then we're not following Georgia code. Now, there is a separate section that deals with ballot marking devices and the ballot summaries that are printed out. But we call those the official paper ballot. So we should be counting the paper ballots.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on that because counting a ballot and counting a piece of paper are two different things. And this rule has us counting a piece of paper. This rule has us counting pieces of paper, not counting ballots.
This is not tabulating. I'm not talking about tabulating. I'm talking about counting the ballots.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Member King.
I just want to point out that according to our Georgia code, the role of the state election board, part of our role is to promulgate rules and regulations to define uniform and non-discriminatory standards. As we stated several times, having some counties counting by hand and some counties not does not establish uniformity. This rule will do that, and we do have the ability to do that. We would not be breaking any statutes.
Well, it says in accordance with the law and with the existing statute, I believe. And if there's no statute support for
Can
this.
you show that to me, Mr. Chairman?
Did you?
I just read it.
Did you read the
I
Attorney
just
General's opinion?
read it out loud. I'm not talking about the Attorney General's opinion. I'm talking about what is in our Georgia election code book.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any further comments by this board? Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to adopt the petition by Ms. Alexander for Rule 183-1-12-.12, tabulating results.
We have a motion to adopt this rule. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Member Gazal.
As a matter of statutory interpretation, the provisions that deal with paper ballots predate even the DRE system. Those dealt with paper ballots that were deposited in a box that did not tabulate, and they do not apply currently. So just to make sure they do not apply to the current system.
We have precedent. We can do this.
Any further discussion? My last comment is this board voting in affirmative, I want to make on the record that we'll be going against the advice of our legal counsel by voting in the affirmative. We will have no further discussion, we'll have a vote by voice.
Before we vote by voice, my discussion is that, Mr. Chairman, I have to point out that every time you make a statement that this could be against the law, you are welcoming lawsuits that will be dismissed, lawsuits that we know will be dismissed. I just read in our code what we can and can't do, undisputed. So I just want to be on record stating that I really am getting a little tired of encouraging lawsuits. We can vote.
I will not correct your comments. We have a motion and a second. We will vote by voice vote by order of seniority. Member Gazal, how do you vote?
Nay.
Member Johnston, how do you vote?
Aye.
Member Jeffries, how do you vote? Aye. Member King, how do you vote?
Aye.
The chair will exercise his right to vote and will vote nay. The motion passes 3-2. Not true. Not true.
Although we just were told that all those cases are going to be dismissed. Are you really doing that?
What?